From MTN News, this is Montana This Morning.
Good Thursday morning. It's 6 o'clock. Welcome to Montana This Morning on this New Year's Eve. I'm Victoria Hill. Thanks for starting your day with us.
And I'm Ed McIntosh. As we get rolling, it's already New Year's Eve. Boy, to talk about the timing there as we take a look out towards Sydney, Australia, where the fireworks are just getting rolling here to start the brand new year halfway around the year.
It's 2021 somewhere, Ed.
Right, you are.
We can't get there soon enough.
That's for sure. Yeah, this is kind of fun to watch. And well, I was talking to Miller Robson, who's going to be here in the mornings and take over on the weather responsibilities. And he was in Sydney for the New Year's celebration quite a few years ago and said that it was just one of the most amazing things that he had been around. So it was a lot of fun for him to see. You can see there with the fireworks display, it's pretty awesome. For us, we're going to rely on the moon to give us our light as we get started here today. As we look at temperatures at 31 right now, a southwest wind at 10 miles per hour. Regional temperatures are very mild. We have some teens in Sheridan and Worland this morning, but otherwise 20s and 30s for all the major reporting stations. Part of that's because we got the cloud cover and then areas of showers across northern Montana that will continue to ease up as we get later in the day, but at least a light coating of snow into a few areas. A lot of that's going to melt really quickly because even the morning temperatures aren't that far below freezing. Meanwhile, the wind advisory just now expired for around the Livingston area. Now, the winds haven't totally disappeared, but certainly starting to see a change, and a winter weather advisory into effect for northwest Montana with some travel concerns. Here in southern Montana and northern Wyoming, looking at temperatures for the most part to be very mild this morning and warming up into the 40s for the afternoon with some breaks of sunshine. And of course, today we're observing New Year's Eve. Well, we showed you we're already celebrating New Year's in areas around Sydney and into New Zealand.
Yeah, and if you didn't hear earlier, Ed sort of mentioned it. Miller's taking over in the mornings starting tomorrow, meaning this is Ed's last morning show with us because he's moving to Nightside.
That's right. Bob McGuire with his final newscast tonight. He's going to be enjoying retirement, so I'm not going to say I'm taking Bob's place. I'll be doing Bob's shift from this point on.
Okay, that's a good way to put it. And so our unofficial holiday today is Ed crosses over to the dark side. And we had a photo earlier, if you happen to see it, it was Ed's face photoshopped into Darth Vader. And so you can't officially cross over to the dark side, Ed, unless you have your very own Darth Vader mask. So there you go. And when we say dark side, we mean it's because it's the evening shift and it's dark outside. And I mean, technically it's dark outside right now, but you know, and I think that might even be a children's size Darth Vader mask, but back around Halloween time. So, and this is what we're going to miss about Ed. Always such a good sport, great friend too, working with you over the past few years, and always good for advice and looking out what's best for us, and we appreciate it so much. And so it is bittersweet. I mean, you're being promoted, but yet we're going to miss you terribly, and looking forward to working with Miller at the same time. See, it's a mix of emotions. It's a mix of things going on.
It is, and I have the mask to hide.
Oh, it even kind of gives you that.
It does.
Darth Vader voice. That's pretty cool.
Luke,
I do like that.
We will look for the sun.
And we're going to miss you in the morning. So yeah, starting tomorrow, it's the official changeover, switchover, and I'll be watching the evening, the 5:30 at least.
That's right.
All right, Ed, it's about time to get to the news.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
We begin this Thursday with the latest on the pandemic. More than 3,700 Americans died from COVID-19 yesterday, which is a single-day record. This as a more contagious strain of the coronavirus is spreading throughout the country. CBS's Deborah Alfarone brings us the latest.
The new strain of COVID-19 has been found in a second state.
Identified in Colorado yesterday has been identified here in the state of California.
Dr. Anthony Fauci told California Governor Gavin Newsom it wasn't surprising given the variant's more contagious nature.
There's no indication at all that it increases the virulence. And by virulence, I mean the ability to make you sick or kill you.
But with California's ICUs already at a breaking point, officials say the usual precautions are still a must.
We need to continue to wear the face mask to protect ourselves, to protect others as well. and we need to do it better.
Health experts believe the current vaccines will be effective against the new strain, but federal officials acknowledge the vaccine rollout needs to improve.
Here's what I have confidence in. Every day, everybody gets better.
For the second day here on Capitol Hill, Senate Republicans blocked efforts to boost those stimulus payments from $600 to $2,000.
The Senate's not going to be bullied into rushing out more borrowed money into the hands of Democrat rich friends who don't need the help.
But it's been President Trump leading the demand, yesterday tweeting $2,000 ASAP.
For once, Democrats agree with something on President Trump's Twitter feed.
The Senate has until Friday at midnight to get the measure passed. On Sunday, a new Congress will be sworn in. Deborah Alfarone, CBS News, Washington.
Here in Montana, almost 17,000 frontline healthcare workers have received a COVID-19 vaccine. So who's next? Beginning in mid-January through March, vaccinations will be available for anyone 75 years or older, frontline essential workers, and members of Montana's Native American tribes. Then in mid-March, vaccinations start for those 65 years and older or anyone at high risk due to underlying medical conditions. The final phase is expected to launch in late spring or early summer for all Montanans ages 16 and older. It's advice you've heard a million times during this pandemic. Stay home, avoid large gatherings, and wear a mask. They're all good suggestions that could be tempting to ignore tonight on New Year's Eve. A quick search online shows several local establishments are moving forward with large parties to ring in 2021. Yellowstone County health leaders say our case numbers are improving, and they hope it's not thrown away for one night of celebrations.
So that's what's at risk. The progress that we've made can very quickly turn around when we put people in high-risk environments, which is really where you compress a lot of people in a small space.
Under the current health order, bars and restaurants are still required to close at 10 p.m. and operate at 50% capacity. Now we go to Helena, where this coming Monday, the 2021 Montana legislature will convene at the Capitol. This legislative session is kicking off in the middle of a pandemic and with a new Republican governor. MTN chief political reporter Mike Dennison tells us why it's shaping up to be a session like no other.
For starters, lawmakers and their staff must navigate how to run a session when many of the people involved for health reasons won't even be in the building, and keep it safe for those who are. Senate President Mark Blaisdell, a Republican from Kalispell, says arrangements are being made so members of the public and lawmakers who don't want to be in the Capitol can take part remotely. Limits will be placed on how many people can be in a committee room to testify on bills. But when it comes to some public health restrictions meant to slow the spread of COVID-19, majority Republicans are not imposing them. Legislators won't be required to wear masks at the Capitol, and it's not clear yet how people will socially distance in the sometimes crowded hallways.
My hope is that the Capitol run is kind of open as possible for those that want to participate. I think it'd be very difficult to try to administer a lot of different rules on that.
Minority Democrats say they'll be wearing masks in the Capitol, and that the lack of a comprehensive plan puts at risk those who work in the building and maybe others across the state.
And our concern is for communities all across the state that can be impacted by bad behavior at the Capitol. We need a clear plan that's safe.
Republicans have created a COVID-19 response panel composed of legislative leaders that will meet next week and discuss any plans. Yet, regardless of safety plans, the session gets underway next week, with Republicans holding big majorities and, for the first time in 16 years, a Republican governor, Greg Gianforte. When asked about priorities for the GOP majority, Blaisdell says they'll be focusing on Gianforte's Montana comeback plan to boost the economy. But this plan is 12 pages long, with scores of proposals. So what specifically are we talking about? Blaisdell says an overarching theme will be changes that make it easier for businesses to operate. For example, acquiring environmental permits.
I think just adding a layer of predictability of, if you go in and you file this and you check these boxes, that this is the time frame that it should be done in for that process to move forward.
Gianforte himself says don't expect grand sweeping proposals, but rather incremental change to help improve Montanans' economic fortunes.
I think you win games with 3 to 5 yard plays. And we're going to run a set of plays here in this first legislative session that are directionally correct, that helps Montanans start to prosper again. And then we're going to huddle up, move the chains, and run some more plays.
Gianforte also has met personally with Democratic leaders who say they may share some goals with him and his fellow Republicans on providing needed services to Montanans. But Republicans have the majorities to move whatever they want, and Democrats may be left on the sideline, playing only the vocal objectors.
We hope that we can partner with them to deliver for communities, but we're going to be there to hold them accountable, to governing in a responsible way.
And as always, there's the unpredictability of every session, perhaps even more so in 2021, with the cloud of the pandemic still hanging over us. At MTN News, we'll be here reporting on how it all unfolds. At the Capitol, I'm Mike Dennison.
And tomorrow, Mike takes a closer look at the operational details of the session as it gets underway next week. Continuing our coverage, Public Service Commissioner Roger Koopman has filed a $2.2 million claim against the PSC and some of its employees. It's over the public release of some of his office emails without his knowledge. Someone at the PSC obtained 3 dozen of Koopman's emails about a year ago and gave them to a conservative news website, which then posted them publicly. The summary of Koopman's claim says the PSC, other commissioners, and some PSC employees took intentional, malicious acts to harm him. If the state denies this claim, Koopman can take the issue to state district courts. Making national news this morning, Republican Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri says he will object when Congress counts the Electoral College votes next week. The move will force lawmakers in the House and Senate to vote on whether to accept the results of President-elect Joe Biden's victory. Hawley is the first senator to announce plans to object. Both the House member and senator are needed to mount an objection when Congress counts the Electoral College votes on January 6th. In the House, a group of Republicans has already pledged to object. Republican lawmakers in some states are pushing for new voting restrictions in future elections. Both Georgia and Pennsylvania, where President Trump has contested results and continues to claim voter fraud, want changes made. Lawmakers want to roll back on measures that allow all registered voters to vote by mail. Republicans say the move is about election safety, but Democrats fear the move could suppress turnout. The Census Bureau says it will miss its year-end deadline for dividing congressional seats. It plans to deliver a population count of each state in early 2021 as close to the missed deadline as possible. But if it's not done before President-elect Joe Biden takes office, President Trump's request of excluding undocumented immigrants from the count will be thrown out. The pandemic delayed census counting this year and made it more difficult. This will be the first time in more than 40 years numbers won't be submitted by December 31st. In other news, there's some concerning statistics from Montana's roadways to report this morning. Authorities say the number of fatal crashes spiked in 2020. MTN's Jonathan Ambarian talked to the Montana Highway Patrol to find out what had contributed to the deadly trend.
Through December 28th, the Montana Highway Patrol had reported a roughly 12% increase in fatal crashes compared with 2019. Leaders say what particularly concerns them are the risk factors that contributed to those crashes. MHP has cataloged 184 fatal crashes and 207 deaths on the roads, up from 165 crashes and 183 deaths through the same time last year. The number of crashes where troopers determined excessive speed played a role rose by more than 23%, and those linked to alcohol and drugs rose by 32% and 17% respectively.
It just never mixes well when you mix alcohol and drugs in driving.
One of the biggest changes involves seatbelt use. In 71 deadly crashes this year, MHP confirmed someone wasn't wearing a seatbelt. That's up 40% from last year.
That's a significant number. That's not just a fluctuation. And so more people driving faster, not wearing their seatbelts on the interstate that possibly are utilizing drugs and alcohol when they get behind the wheel.
MHP says even one fatality on the roads is too many, and these numbers are alarming. They're urging drivers to remember the small steps that can go a long way to reducing the risk.
These fatalities affect so many people and their families. Nobody goes out on the interstate or on the primary roadways wanting to be involved in a fatality crash. Think of those family members when you've had alcohol to drink or drugs, or don't click that seatbelt. It's very easy to get in a ride with somebody, click your seatbelt on, and slow down.
This year's large increase came after the number of fatal crashes didn't change much between 2018 and 2019. In Helena, Jonathan Amberian, MTN News.
The biggest increase in deadly crashes this year was in MHP's Great Falls district, which includes much of central Montana. It saw 19 fatal crashes in 2020, up from just 9 last year. Longtime former Billings Police Chief Gene Kaiser passed away at his Billings home last week. Kaiser joined the Billings Police Department in 1961 and was appointed chief in 1977. His 13-year tenure as chief was only recently surpassed by current police chief Rich St. John, who has headed the department for the past 14 years. After Kaiser retired in 1990, he moved to Helena, where he was later appointed director of the Board of Crime Control. A memorial service for Kaiser is set for Saturday at the First Baptist Church in Billings. He was 84 years old. And before we take a break, the U-2 spy plane has been at the heart of U.S. intelligence efforts dating back to the 1950s. This morning, in part 2 of his story, MTN's Jay Cohn talks with Livingston resident Ed Walby, a former U-2 pilot and squadron commander.
And the rest is just kind of memorabilia.
Retired Air Force Colonel Ed Walby's basement is like a museum for America's notorious U-2 spy plane. Letters from Presidents Reagan, Ford, and Bush congratulating Walby on his distinguished career adorn the walls. Photographs and memorabilia document Walby's time with the U-2 program.
You literally feel like you're on top of the world. You can see the curvature of the earth. You can actually look up and it's real dark above you. You can see stars during the day.
Walby's the first to tell you that every flight in the U-2 is special. But included in his 1,000 hours in the cockpit, 2 of his missions stand out from the rest. In March of 1989, Walby was at the controls when the U-2 flew alongside the space shuttle during its launch. NASA wanted a closer look at what was damaging the shuttle's tiles.
I flew the first mission and shuttle goes zipping by. We're inside of 5 miles. And what we do is point the camera and just shoot as the shuttle goes to see if we could catch any debris.
But due to the shuttle's speed and flight path, Walby had to fly without autopilot. It's what happened next that Walby remembers the most.
As soon as the shuttle passed by, I looked up and I was about 60 degrees nose high, about 40 knots, which is about 40 miles an hour under my stall speed, and it was just hanging there, and it started to fall. And I said to myself, don't do anything. Whatever you do, it can't be right. And so I just let the airplane, slice through the horizon, fall, gather speed, lost about 4,000 feet. And the airplane regained speed. Had I done anything, I probably would have been at the bottom of the ocean with the camera.
One of Walby's proudest moments came in the early days of the Afghanistan war. As commander of the 99th Reconnaissance Squadron, its Global Hawk program, the U-2's drone counterpart, proved to be invaluable.
The Marines were trying to come up that valley, and the bad guys had lined the ridge, and they were going to ambush our guys. We saw them through our infrared that these guys were there. We warned the Marines, and they were able to get away, as well as we called in a gunship, and we kind of, what's called, waxed them.
It was during the Battle of Tora Bora that for the first time the Global Hawk proved its mettle in a real-life combat scenario. Walby believes both the versatile U-2 and the unmanned Global Hawk have a role in helping the U.S. stay a step ahead in intelligence gathering. While the U-2 can put eyes in the sky pretty much anywhere, anytime, the Global Hawk can fly almost forever.
The unique part about Global Hawk, though, is it's computer controlled. You're not flying it with a joystick. You're just telling it where to go. And the computer takes off, flies, and you just give it direction. Or you can pre-program it to take any course you want. You can actually launch the airplane and walk away, and it'll come back the next day.
In addition to his piloting skills, Walby is quite an artist.
It's just a hobby. I do paintings too.
His signed sketches of the famous spy plane are a hot item on eBay. And he loves to work on model airplanes. He made this model of the U-2 himself. As we wrapped up our discussion, I thanked Ed for his service, and he invited us back to reminisce another day. As he told me in a recent email, old pilots love to talk about themselves. We're thankful he chose to share his story with us. In Billings, I'm Jay Cohn reporting for MTN News.
Thank you, Jay. Stick with us here on Montana This Morning.